Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. Today we are going to be continuing our discussion of working with data, doing CRUD operations against SQL Server, but against other data types as well. And we're going to be referring to the example that we came up with about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is the Alpha Anywhere test drive application, which is available for you today up on GitHub, if you'd like to go and get that. We've covered that in the last couple of webinars. Before I go any further, though, I just want to do a quick AV check. So if you could just let me know whether or not you can see my screen, see my mouse moving around, hear my voice, just let me know by saying something into the questions window or the chat box. Just say, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, so let's get cracking. Last week, we were covering this particular screen of the Alpha test drive. This is the user details screen. And this was an example of a UX that was bound, that was data bound to a particular table so that the fields that were on that UX connected directly to that table. There is another example that we had, but didn't go into much depth, and that was the to-do list, another part of our sample application. The to-do list also has a form that you can fill in, like the one that you have here, but it isn't bound directly to the UX. Instead, it's bound to something called a list control. And in fact, you can see sort of the list view here of that very same component. So last week, we talked about controls that were bound to the UX. This week, we're going to talk about controls that are bound to a list control and using list controls rather than direct data binding. So this is the example over here on the right, UX component, where we have, say, 3 fields. Those fields are bound to the list control. The list control is what's bound to our data source. So why would you do that? Why not just go directly? Well, for one thing, list controls can show multiple records at once. So of course, that's a huge benefit if that's what you need. But it also works offline. It can keep track of data synchronization. It has a great deal of flexibility as to its layout. In fact, it can be a map, it could be a Kanban display with a little bit of JavaScript. It can be a calendar control. So there's a lot that you can do with a list control. So it's used an awful lot in applications. And today we're going to go over the list control and show you how you can use it in your application as well. So I'm going to pop over here to my server. And we're going to go take a look. So we're going to build something that looks a little bit like this here today, this to-do list example. And some of the features of this are, well, it's got a search part up here. So if I said something like path, and I typed it and I hit the enter key, it finds me tasks that have got the word path in it, or pathways. It has the ability to click and get details on particular items in a list. I can make changes to that. For example, just make a quick change to the text here. I can click save and have it go back, and you'll see that my changes have been updated. I can create new records. We can also sort things just by clicking on column titles, and that includes the status field. The status field, if you can see here, instead of having text, it's been replaced by these icons as well. So this doesn't take much. There is a little bit of coding that's required to set up something like this, but today we're going to take you through all of it. We're also going to show you how to do some styling and some other things as well. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and click New. Now that I'm on the Web Projects control panel, I'm going to choose Web Component, and we're going to build a new UX component. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now here is my blank UX. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a control to it. We're going to add a list control. So there's the list. I'll click OK, and there's my list. So now I can double click on the list, and I can choose the source from which the data will be derived. So in this case, we're going to take it from a SQL database, and we're going to use the database that we set up for the test drive application. And then it's going to say, what is the method for defining the query? Fields from a table. And then it's going to say, what table do we want to use? And we already have one called the to-do list table. And I can show you the structure of that right now. I'm going to go ahead and double click on the to-do list. We'll go into structure. Here I am in SQL Server Studio because this is a SQL Server database. And the records is pretty simple. It just has an ID, status, a category, a task, the due date, a create date, and there's a 1-bit field here as to whether or not it's completed. We're not actually using this field. Instead, we're using status to let you know whether or not it's completed. But I just wanted to show you what the structure was so that makes sense as we start to lay out our list. So here we are back in the list builder, and I'm going to go into the fields list. And I'm going to say I want the ID field, status, category, task, due date, and create date. We'll leave this one alone. And I'll click OK. And now if I say preview the list, whoops, I haven't actually done a list layout. So I've selected the fields, but I haven't said which fields in particular I want to display. So I'm going to do that here in list layout. So I'm going to choose the ID field, status field, category, task, due date, and create date. And I'm going to go ahead and click preview list this time. We should be able to see some data. And there it is. So I'm going to click OK. And that gives you a rough preview when you're in this view. But if you go into working preview, you're going to see what it's really going to look like. And here it is right here. And you'll see out of the bat, there is some functionality built into it. Like I can click on these columns, for example, and have them sort. So that's already built in for me. But let's take a look, and but it doesn't really do anything besides that. If I click on a particular row, it doesn't do anything. And so what I want to do is I want to have a detail section that's going to go along with this list. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to double click on the list, and then I'm going to go into the list properties, and I'm going to check this second option here called has detail view. And as soon as I click that, you'll see I have a new tab that appears. It's the detail view tab. So I'm going to click on that detail view tab. And we're going to say field map is what we want to do. And it says, what can you map the fields to fields on the UX? In other words, this list control, if it's going to have a detail section, it's going to want to have individual fields. So which are the individual fields on our UX? Well, I haven't actually created any yet, so I can't really map them. But what I can do is I can use this feature right here called Create New UX Controls for All Unmapped Fields. If I click on that, it's going to create those controls for me. So now I can click OK. And the next thing it's going to say is, OK, I'm going to create these controls for you. Where do you want them? I want them after the list. So I'm going to click OK on that. And OK, one more. And it's giving me a quick note here, which you can pretty much ignore. It just says the return type for the list has to be set to primary key. But it takes care of that for you. So you're all set. So now you see it's actually created out all of these fields for me, and it's placed them here in this container. So if I go into working preview and take a look at it now, you will see that I have got some fields listed here underneath. If I click on this, I can see the ID. If I click on this, you can see that ID and so on. So it shows me the details of each one of these records. All right, that's pretty cool. And let me go ahead and just save this work as we're going. So I'm going to call this to do example 2. Okay. And because I have my security system turned on, I'm going to set this to always allowed. This is just a test, so I'm not really going to try to keep this page secure. So now that that's set to always allow, I go into working preview, which I've just shown you. My fields are there. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the list on one page or one panel. And I'd like to have these fields on another panel so that when I click on a particular item in the list, it goes and selects that field and shows me the details. So to do that, instead of using a container, which I'm going to go ahead and delete, I'm going to put these into what's called a panel card. So I'm going to delete this. Yes, delete this one and the one at the bottom. And so now all my fields are there. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to select all of the fields here in the list. I'm going to go down to panels. and I'm going to insert what's called a panel navigator. Here's my panel navigator. And within the panel navigator, I'm going to insert 2 panel cards. These will be cards that you could switch between. So panel card 1 is going to go around the list, and panel card number 2 is going to go around the fields. And now if I take a look at what's going on, you will see that when I first come to my list, I'm only going to see the list. But if I click and drag over to the next panel, I can see the fields that are with that one. So if I clicked on, say, this one, I scrolled over, I can see the details along with that one. All right, so that's nice, but there are 2 things I want to do. First of all, I want to make it so when I click on one of these, it actually takes me over to this panel over here. So to do that, I'm going to work on the list here, and we're going to go take a look at the properties, in particular the on-click event or the on-select event. So we're going to scroll down here for that list into properties. I'm going to choose the on-select action. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to insert a bit of JavaScript. Now, I don't want to write the JavaScript myself. This is a low-code product, so we are going to instead create a piece of action JavaScript for us. So I'm going to click on that. And in it, we're going to say, we're going to create a new action. We're going to call this one navigate to, actually, let's just call it get details, because it's going to move you to the details screen. All right. So I've named the action, but I haven't actually defined what it does. So to do that, I'm going to click Edit Action, choose Add a New Action, and here we're going to use Action JavaScript to do the work for us. So I'm just going to do a search for an action JavaScript called Panel Actions. I'm going to grab Panel Actions, and we're going to choose Set Active Panel, and then we're going to choose the panel that we want to go to. In this case, it's Panel Card 2. So once I saved that, I can now insert a very small piece of code to run that action JavaScript. And I just do that up here. And now when I select, it's going to go to my Get Details screen. So let's click OK. OK again. We'll go to Working Preview. And we'll take a look. Now when I click on something, yep, it moves me right over to that screen. That's pretty good, except that once I get this to the screen, I'm kind of stuck there unless I know that I can click and drag and move it back. So instead, what I want to do is I want to add a back button that's going to take me back to the other screen. So we'll go into the designer, and underneath the create date on panel card 2, we're going to add a button. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a button here from my list, and we'll call this button the back button. All right. Now I can double click on the back button to define it, and we are going to add an action. Probably already know how to do this part because we just did it. We're going to go take a look at panel actions. And we're going to say set active panel. And this time we're going to say go back to panel card 1. And we can call this return. And I'm going to save that. So now when I click this button, it's going to go back. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Working Preview. We should now be able to choose an item and see details. Now we can hit back and go back to where we were. All right, so that's pretty cool, but it doesn't really do much in terms of we can view the data, which is great, but we can't really update it. Well, we kind of can, because if you go in here and you start typing something, let's say plant maple tree on the south border, for example, I can in fact edit the record, but you'll notice it doesn't actually stick. You know, whoop, it did there, but it won't if I were to leave and come back, design, and come back into Working Preview. My edit is not going to be carried over because we didn't actually write, see, it's back to trees. We didn't actually write that record back to the database. So how do we add functionality to make that happen? So what we're going to do is we're going to want to add a save button. And in fact, we're going to also want to have a save and maybe a reset button. So To do that, we're going to do it a little differently. Instead of just inserting just a regular button, we're going to go into defined controls down here, because there are controls already that know how to do that. So let me just scroll down here to add those buttons. So I think what I'm looking for is submit reset. Let me just. Okay, hang on one second. Sorry, it's list button actions. And control. All right, hang on a second. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why I lost my control here for a second. I'm going to go take a look at my other one that I pre-prepared. We'll see which one I did. Yeah, it was those buttons, the list buttons. Okay, hang on a second. List detail view buttons. I don't know how I blanked that. It's the problem doing a live webinars, right? My brain is in 3 places at once. So we're going to go ahead and say list detail view buttons. This is what we're going to select. It should open up a dialog box for us and ask us which list we'd like these buttons to apply to. So I'm going to go ahead and click list 1. And then here we're going to go ahead and say one of the buttons we want is save. That would be a good one to have. I'd like one which does a new record. That would be good. I'd like one that does a delete record. That would be good. Undo edits. Yeah, that would probably be a good one to have as well. And then there's one called synchronize. And what synchronize does that save doesn't do is after you make a save in those fields, it does save the data to the list, but it doesn't synchronize it with the database. So that's actually a separate action and a separate button we're going to put here. Although later on, I'm going to show you how we can combine those actions together. All right, so let me go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to click Save. And this time we're going to go into Working Preview. So I've added those buttons back in. Add River Rocks, let's just say. And you'll see now I've got a Save button, which lets me save. And then a Synchronize button, which pushes the data back onto the server. And then a Back button, which will take me back here. Now, what you might want to do, in fact, I think I do want to do, is move that new record button over onto the first page, because it doesn't make sense. Well, it could make sense having it there, but it makes more sense to have it just underneath the list. So I'm just going to take that button and using the up arrow, I'm just going to move it over here to the list. Now, the save button, I like the save button, but I want the save button to also do the synchronization for me. And I want it to go back. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that code from the synchronize code here, that Alpha Anywhere built for me automatically, this synchronize button, and I'm going to copy all of this right into my clipboard. And I'm going to go into Action JavaScript, and I'm going to create a new Action JavaScript, and I'm going to call this one Synchronize, or Sync. Okay. Edit the action, and I'm going to paste that in here in text mode. And we'll go ahead and save that. And I'll click OK. And save again. And now I've got the synchronize code now as an action JavaScript. So what I can do now is I can go to that save button, and I could say underneath the code here in the save button, I can run the synchronize. So I'm going to say insert code to run my JavaScript function. I'm going to choose sync. And now when it saves, it should synchronize at the same time. Let's see if it does that. So I'll go into Working Preview. And I'll choose any one of these records. How about that one? In front, let's say walk. I'm going to click Save. You'll see that the synchronize button lit up for a second, but then it went back. If I go back into design, if I go back to the list, you'll see that it's been updated here as well. So now that's pretty cool. Now let's have it do one more thing, and that's have it navigate back to the previous screen when it's done saving. So we can do that by creating yet another action JavaScript. Let's do that a different way though. Let's go over here to JavaScript actions, and I'm going to create a new action, and we're going to call this one go back. And we're going to edit that action. New action. Again, we're going to be doing a panel card action. And the action name there is going to be set active panel. And this is back to panel card 1. All right, so now we've saved that. Saved. We'll go back to working preview. Oops, I forgot to do the one thing, that is actually add the code into that button. So let's go back into our save button. We've added the code for sync, but we haven't added the code to navigate back. So let's go into action JavaScript. We'll insert that code and we'll say go back as our JavaScript. So now we'll go ahead and hit save. Take a look. This time, let's just hit the new record button because we haven't done that. Ah, here's a problem. Notice I clicked on the new record button and it probably did open a new record, but it opened it on that other panel. So I can't actually get to it unless I scroll over there. Let's go ahead and just fix that one right now. So we're going to go back into design. We're going to take a look at that new record button. And we're going to add a piece of action JavaScript, insert code to action JavaScript, the one that says get details. Because when it creates the new record, we want to actually go to the field so we can start filling in those fields for the new record. So I'm going to click save on that. We'll go into working preview. And I'm going to choose this one. Oops, sorry. What I meant to do is I meant to click the new button. So new button. And there's the new button. So I'm going to say status. We'll say it's complete. Category paths or pathways. I forget what we do. Task is remove debris. The due date. You'll notice I have a calendar control built in. I didn't have to do any coding for that, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to choose that. And actually, it doesn't work that well here in this view. So, but what you can do is if you open up the detach the working preview window, you can set a date that way too. I'll just type one in though. Let's say it's 8/27. Okay. So now I'm going to click save. And there it is. It's created that new record for me. All right, so we can create new records. When we click save, we'll come back to this. The only other thing that we need to fix in terms of the create, in terms of CRUD, is the delete portion of it. So let's go take a look at that right now. If I choose a record like the one I just created and I click delete record, it says, are you sure? Yes. But you'll notice what didn't happen is it did not synchronize, nor did it go back. So we want it to synchronize and we want it to go back. We're going to update this in a little bit different way than we have our other buttons. And let me show you how. I'm going to go take a look at the delete button just to show you what's there. And here it is, delete record. And all it does is it runs this. So I could, in fact, put in two pieces of JavaScript underneath. I could do the one which says synchronize, and I could do the one that says to return. But what I found happened was that that didn't work because sometimes JavaScript is not done in the order in which you expect it. So when I ran those three things together, what I ended up happening was it synchronized, then deleted, then brought me back, as opposed to deleting and then synchronizing because it was just out of order. But not to fear, because there is a solution for that, and that is to adjust one of the events here in the list control. So I'm going to go into the list control, And I'm going to go into list properties, and we're going to scroll down to the JavaScript properties. And if you remember, we had set that on select event earlier on. That's the one that navigates us to the other page. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go under more events, and you'll see there's actually quite a few more events. If I shut off defined events only, you'll see these are all of the things that can be used to trigger a piece of script. So I'm going to go here to detail view events. And the one I'm going to scroll down to is the one that's called after delete row. And I can actually just do a filter. So if I type delete after delete row, that's what I want. So I'm going to define something. So the after delete row fires after the user has deleted a row in the list. In other words, after they've clicked that button which says delete and it fires that delete action. What JavaScript do I want to have next? Well, what I want it to do is, first of all, synchronize. So I'm going to insert my sync code again. And then I want it to return to the first page. So I'm going to insert another piece of JavaScript called go back. And that's all there is to it. So we'll go ahead and click OK. I'm going to save that. We'll take a look again at working preview. And let's choose, let's add a new record. And we'll just, this will be complete junk, which is why we're going to be happy to delete it. So click save, should synchronize and return. There's our junk record. I'm going to click on that junk record. I'm going to hit delete. And if we did everything right, after it asks us if we want to delete the record, you'll see that the record has in fact been deleted and it's been removed from the list. So now we've got pretty much all of the functionality we want. We can edit records, we can delete records, we can create new records and all of that. A couple other things that we'll probably want to do, but let's scroll down, take a look here at my list of things to do. And the new thing I want to do is, let's start formatting this just a little bit. So first of all, for statuses, this one here, I don't want the user to type in statuses because I want these to be standard values that are entered every time. So instead of a text box, I want to do a drop-down list. I'm just going to head and choose drop-down box as the type here for my status. And then if I scroll down to set the choices for that drop-down box, which are right here. All right, and I'm going to say my choices are complete. Maybe pending would be the first one. And on hold will be my last one. All right, so now when I'm filling this out, I will have choices here from that status box. The other thing I want to do is the create date. It doesn't make any sense why I should put in the create date. I should let the system set that for me. So to do that, I'm going to set a default value. So I'm going to choose create date here. I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to choose default value. Now, if you click here under more, which I'm going to do, it does give you an example for doing a date. It says right here, equals date, open, close, paren. So that's all we really have to do. I'm going to say equals date, open, close, parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and click save on that. And we will go into working preview. And now in working preview, when I select something here, if I wanted to make a change to the status, I could do it here. There's my dropdown. And if I wanted to create a new record, choose new record, you'll see my create date has already been filled in for me. All right, cool. So we pretty much have this all working. We've got the create date in. The only last thing is there's no point in having the create date be settable by the user at all, or even displayed. We just want it set behind the scenes. So to do that under create date, we're just going to scroll down to where it says hide. And this is going to remove it from our layout and keep our layout a little bit cleaner. Okay, so now that we have the status set as dropdown, so we know that the data in it is going to be pretty consistent. I don't think I varied too much. I think they're all pretty much on hold, complete, or pending. Instead of having the statuses be words, it would be kind of cool if we had them as icons. So let's show you how we did that. I'm going to go take a look here at the list. We'll double click on that, and we're going to go into the list layout. Here in the list layout are the columns that we have on the list. One thing I'd like to do right off the bat, though, is remove the ID column. There's no reason for you to see what the internal sort of record number is for this. It doesn't really do any good, and you shouldn't be able to edit it anyway. So I'm going to remove that. But the second thing is I'm going to go into status. And you'll see right now, for each one of these, there's something called a template. When I go into the status field, there is a template which simply says open curly brace status, closed curly brace. For category, it's the same thing, curly brace category. Task, it's the same thing. But if we go into status and we edit it, that status thing is really just a placeholder. There are other types of placeholders that we can put in too. In fact, we can add all kinds of things like images and stuff like that. And in fact, that's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to start out not with this, but we're going to start out with an if statement. So I'm going to go into template commands, and one of the ones you'll find here is if. So if, and if. Oh, sorry, up here. If. Okay. So if status. Now we're dealing in JavaScript here, so it's going to be equals equals. So if status equals on hold, I want it to say, let's just do a quick experiment before we even mess around with images. I want it to say hold like that. Otherwise, let's do another template command, else if status equals pending. We'll say in process. Or actually, instead of for pending, let's not do the pending one. Let's do the complete one. I like that. Complete. And we'll say complete. Complete. And then we'll do another template command. This time will just be the else, because we know in that case, the only other thing it could possibly be is on hold. Pending. So here we're going to say pending. And then we'll end our if command. And if. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Let's take a preview of the list to see how it's going to look. If you'll notice now in the status, we've made it now looks different. It says complete and hold. It has these exclamation points. So we know that our if statements are working. But now instead of putting in words, let's put in some icons instead. So here I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say that if it's pending, let's just have it do nothing. So I'm going to just leave that section blank. But if it's on hold, I want to have like a red indicator, something that's going to catch my attention. So instead of saying hold, I'm going to insert an image, and I can do that right here. Insert image, and I'm going to choose from one of the SVG icons that comes with Alpha Anywhere. So we're going to go ahead and choose select. And I think the one called warning was pretty good. One called warning, or exclamation point, or hold. Which one did I have? Is there a check mark? Triangle. Ah, triangle. There we go. So we're going to grab this one here. And on top of that, I want to make it red. So I'm going to go here to the stroke color. We'll just click way up here to make it red. There it is. Click OK. Oops, except I want to adjust the fill color, not the stroke color. My bad. Nope. Here we go. And there's my red icon. Cool, right? So now whenever it's on hold, I should see that icon. Now with the complete, let's do a tick mark or a check mark. Let's go to insert image. SVG icon, select. I'm going to type in check. Ah, there we go. That's a nice one. And let's make the fill color on this one green. So let's choose a nice green here. Kind of a nice green. bright, not too bright. We'll choose that one. We can always go back and adjust it if we need to. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to click OK again. And a third time. Let's save this. Let's go ahead and take a look at working preview. See what we've got going there now. Aha. So now, when something is pending, it's not marked at all. When something is complete, it's marked with one of these green arrows. And if the status is on hold, it's going to be marked with the red triangle. And the nice thing is, even though I don't have text here, I can still sort by those status fields right here. It's kind of cool. All right, so we've got that in, but I don't necessarily like the amount of space that's here. I don't need all of the space here for status. So how do we start adjusting this grid here itself, or this list? We're going to go ahead and go back into the list layout. And you'll notice that the widths for these, by default, are not set to a certain number of pixels or even a percentage. They use something called flex. So flex is just a relative term. If everything has a flex of 1, alpha is going to try to make everything the same size, because relative to each other, 1 is the same. But let's say for status, we wanted to have that be the smallest one, and that's going to be a flex of 1. But category, let's see, that could be a little bit bigger. Let's make that a flex of 2. The task, which is the thing that, is pretty much the thing you really want to read. Let's give it a lot of space. Let's try a flex of 6. For the due dates, I think a flex of 2 should do it. And the same would be true for create date. And you know what? I don't even think we need create date in here. So I'm going to remove create date. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click save. We're going to go into working preview. And you'll see I now have nice tight column width here for status, and I have nice long width here for the tasks. So I've got I have it kind of laid out the way that I want it to. So the only two other things that I want to do is I want to give it a little bit more functionality. The first thing I want to do is add in a ability to do a search, which would be cool, so I can find a particular task like I showed in the other one. And then lastly, at the end, we're going to show you how we can do a quick way of exporting our list to an Excel file if we need to. We can have that functionality real quick as well. So let's go ahead into design. And in design, I'm going to go into the list, and I'm going to tell the list in its properties that it has a search part. So I'm going to click search. And now I'm going to go into the search part tab, which just appeared once I clicked that option. So it says search part field map. How do you want to search? What I like doing, you can do it lots of different ways, but I like doing a single keyword control. So I have one box that can look through multiple fields. As it turns out, I'm really only interested in one field anyway. It's just going to be the task field. None of them are that interesting to search on. And then it's going to say where is the keyword search control? And I'm going to say, I don't actually have one set up yet. In other words, it wants me to have a field here that may be called search or something like that. I haven't created that, but what I can do is I can click this little genie here, search part quick setup genie. And I'm going to say, I would like you to create that UX control for my keyword search. And I want you to add buttons to perform the search part. And I'm going to click OK. Now the next thing it's going to ask me is, where do I want those buttons? I want them to appear, let's put them up at the top actually. Let's put everything up at the top. So just after list 1. It's going to say, I'll put those in. Do you want them wrapped in a container? Sure, why not? Click OK. Let's go into working preview. Oops. Let it do its rendering. Now we'll go into working preview, and there is my thing. So what do I want to search for? So let's find something. Rocks or rock. I'm going to search for rock. I'm going to click search. And now it's narrowed it down just to rock. And I can hit clear filter, and it'll show me everything else again. Now, one modern thing people tend to do is they tend to put those search and those clear buttons directly into the search field. So we're going to do that too. I'm going to go ahead and go into design, and we're going to go find that search field. Here it is, keyword search. And I'm going to say that it's going to have a button on the inside. Let's do a search for button, custom in-control buttons. So I'm going to check that box. And it's going to say, go ahead and define that. I'm going to say fine. And actually, before I define that, yeah, no, I'll define that now. And this one will be called search. And it's going to be an icon and the icon name. Let's do an SVG again. Select. Let's see if there's a magnifying glass or something like that. Oops, I'm in the wrong field. So we'll choose a magnifying glass as our search button. That looks nice. And then it's going to say what is the action that it should perform. I'm not ready to set that up just yet, so I'm going to hit cancel, but I'm going to go ahead and click OK. What I want to do is I want to use the same code that's here in this button. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that code. Right click, copy. And I'm going to go back into the definition of that button. And I'm going to say, what's the action? I'm just going to paste that in here. Paste. So now I should have a search button that's inside my field as opposed to outside my field. Let's take a look. Search for rock. And there it is. Now let's move the clear button in there as well. So to do that, let's go into the existing clear button, grab its code, copy that, go back to my keyword search thing, go back into the button definition. We're going to add a new one. This one is going to be called delete. It's going to also be an icon. We'll do an SVG icon. We'll do an X. X. Let's find a good size X. Maybe this one. Right. And what's the action? The action will be the JavaScript we just copied, called clear search. And now those buttons should be hooked up and working. Search for rock. Search. There it is. Clear. Takes us back. That's great. And the only other thing we need to do, just get rid of those two existing buttons because we don't need them. The other thing I want to do, just while I'm here, because it's kind of bugging me, is I think that there's a field label or something that's showing, yeah, right above here where it says list one. That's kind of silly. Let's get rid of that. So here I'm on list. Just going to scroll down to the label section. And where it says where the field label should be positioned, I'm just going to say none. So don't put it there. All right, let's go take a look. And there it is. Everything looks pretty good. So the last thing I want to do is let's just add a button that lets the user export this data. So we'll put it next to the new record button. Add a new button. And that's under, you can find that under other controls, the button. I tend to add these controls like that to my favorites list by moving the cursor over here, right clicking and saying add to favorite. So there's my button. I'm going to change the text to say export. Now I can double click on the button to define it, say add a new action, and export, import data, export data, ASCII, hang on, export. Let's try Excel. Using a report definition, that's not what I want to do. How did I set it up with the last one? Let's go take a look. let's take a look at, this is the real one that comes with the application, the to-do list. And it's got an export button right here. It's a list control action. That's what I was doing wrong. Thanks very much. Let's close that down. Nope. So there's our export button. We're going to add a new action. It's going to be a list action. And the action name is going to be export data to Excel or ASCII. And then I just have to choose the list. There's only one, so that's easy. Export list data settings. You have some choices. I'm going to do it in Excel format. I think I can leave pretty much all of these alone, which I'm going to do. We'll save that. We're going to go into working preview. Oops, go back, and we will choose export. And now it's just prompting me what I want to look at it in. Let's choose file viewer, sure. And then when it pops open, it should show me my fields. And there it is. There's an export of my data in Excel format. So what you've seen today is how to put together really a to-do list application, complete with data synchronization, the search and find functions, some formatting, and the ability to export to Excel. Now, next week, we're going to do something. So that's pretty much all I want to cover today. Let me just see if there are any questions on what we have today. And then that was about it. Oh, someone said make some of the fields narrower. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more that you can do there. All right, cool. And then that's about it. Am I going to update this on GitHub? I am not, because the to-do list that's there is actually a better example than the one that I showed you today, and it pretty much mirrors what I did today, but with a few little extra styling tricks. So let's go ahead and take a look at that to-do list. And again, this is the one you can get here on GitHub. It should look familiar. I put my keyword search up here at the top. There's a list that I've also called list one. There's also that export button. Status is there. Category, I ended up making a drop-down list for, so that was a little bit different. And then in the layout of the list itself, let's go take a look at it. What I did was I took that create date and I put it here underneath in a smaller font. And I did that right here in the list. If we take a look at the list layout and the status, sorry, not the status, the task, you'll see what I did here was I created a template where the task was there, but then underneath I styled it so that it was smaller and a lighter color. I put in that placeholder for the create date. Oh, and the other thing I did was I used what's called a format directive. A format directive lets you take data from your database and display it in a way that's more pleasing for you. For example, I told it that the date string that's coming in this way is going to be in month, month, day, day, year, year format. But the way I want it back is I want it in day, day, and then the name of the day, the first three letters of it, and then the year. So you can find those here under format directives. And those are the different ones: friendly date and time, date formats, numeric formats, and more. Cool. Well, that looks like it for questions. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining me today. I know it's a little bit longer than we normally do. Next week, I've got a special guest. I've got Scott Binger, who's going to be showing you some really cool stuff he's been building in Alpha Anywhere to do analytics. But these are analytics that are driven by AI, where he actually has AI creating the SQL commands for him without even sharing the data with. He is using ChatGPT, but he doesn't actually share the data with ChatGPT. It's all walled off. I got to see a demo of this a couple weeks ago. It was really fantastic, and he's willing to do a demo for us next week, so I hope you can join us for that. Until then, take care, stay well, and send your questions to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com. Bye-bye.